for delaying. I didn't think we were all here, but apparently we are. It is past the time, so we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Hope you guys had a good weekend and happy Monday afternoon. So with that, Mo, if you don't mind calling the roll, please.
Of course. Town of Ashland, Miss Amos.
Here.
Charles City County, Miss Adams.
Here.
Chesterfield County, Miss Smith.
Here.
Goochland County, Mr. Longerbeam.
Here.
Hanover County, Chair Vidunas.
Here.
Henrico County, Miss Smidler.
Here.
New Kent County, Miss Inman.
Oh, good afternoon. I'm here.
Powhatan County, Mr. Webb.
Here.
City of Richmond, Miss Clark.
Good afternoon. Here.
GRTC, Mr. Adarkwa. Cvta, Mr. Parsons.
Here.
Plan RVA, Mr. Bushing.
Here.
VDRPT, Ms. Dubinsky. Mr. Hudson. VDOT, Mr. Hagan. Miss McAdory. RMTA, Miss Dean. Virginia Port Authority, Miss Nelson. And we do have a quorum.
Excellent. Okay, so moving on to item 4, this would be consideration of amendments to the agenda. I'm going to propose an amendment to the agenda that we amend item number 8 to make that a action item. It's currently an information item. The proposed action will be to authorize staff to proceed to step 4 as we consider an off-cycle regional funding request from the city of Richmond. I discussed this earlier with Chet. I don't believe this requires a motion in a second. I believe as chair, I have the authority to make that change. Are there any other amendments to the agenda that somebody would like to offer? Okay. Item number 5, approval of the October 6th, 2025 minutes. We'll need a motion in a second.
This is Sharon Smidler with Henrico. I make a motion to approve the October 6th meeting minutes.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
I should have qualified. Does anybody have any changes to the minutes before we vote on that? Okay, this can be handled by voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? Motion passes. Next on the agenda, item 6 is the public comment period. Do we have any members of the public wishing to address the committee?
Mr. Chair, there are a few attendees that are members of the public, I believe. So I would ask if anyone who is attending would like to speak in front of the TAC, please use the raise your hand function. And we'll get you activated so you can be heard. Okay, I see somebody. This is Jack Stump. Jack, can you introduce yourself and tell us where you're from?
Hi, I'm not necessarily a member of the public. I am here from Timmons Group in support of Ms. Jerona Clark's upcoming item. Also, we have DJ Mulkey from the EDA, who's also online and available to speak should we need it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the comment. Do we have anybody else that wishes to address the committee?
Mr. Chair, I don't see anybody else that's raised their hand.
Okay, so that completes public comment period. Next on the item is an action item concerning Fall Line Trail wayfinding agreement for the town of Ashland.
Yes, sir. This is item 7, as you said. It's on page 11 of the agenda packet. And this is a request from the town of Ashland for recommendation of a project agreement covering wayfinding costs for the town of Ashland. This has been done previously for Henrico and Hanover counties, and Ms. Amos, I'm sure can speak to this, but it's a similar action that would take place so that Ashland can get their signs fabricated and paid for.
Okay. All right.
I don't have anything necessarily to add.
Okay.
Because of the amount, we don't have to go through an RFP procurement process. We just need to get a couple quotes, but we did get information on who I think Hanover maybe Henrico had contracted with. And so we're just gonna ask for a bid from them and then a couple other folks.
Okay, very good. Would you like to make a motion?
That would be fantastic. I move for approval of the Ashland Spa agreement for the Fall Line Trail wayfinding.
Second. All right. We have, I'm sorry, Amy, you have your hand up?
Okay, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just a quick question. Nora, are you, I'm assuming, using the wayfinding destinations that we came up with during that process?
Yes.
Okay, so the Secretariat Monument will be on there.
Honestly, I don't know what's on there, but whatever we went through on the process is what we're ordering.
Okay, I think it was, so hopefully it will be. That's a major destination. Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions before I call for the vote? Okay, we can handle this by voice vote as well. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes. Okay, moving right along, we're at item number 8. This concerns the off-cycle funding request from the city of Richmond for the roadway improvement portion of their Diamond District project. Chet, do you want to give some background on this, please?
Yes, sir. Thank you. This is there's a staff report on page 22 of the agenda packet. I think we could start there. So the city has made a request for Cvta to consider an off-cycle funding request for regional funds. We do have in the project selection and allocation framework a process for consideration of off-cycle funding requests. This is a 5-step process, which I included. I just copied it out of the framework and put that in the staff report. And it's basically the applicant submits the request to the executive director, including all required details for project evaluation. TAC then in step 2 validates the need for the off-cycle project request, why it can't wait essentially for the biannual formal application cycle. Staff checks to see if funds are available in the year needed or if funds can be reprogrammed. The framework says the TAC action is required to move to step 3. Staff reports on eligibility, scores, ranks, and reviews against funding scenario in step 4. And then finally, with all of that information in hand, TAC makes a recommendation to the authority. The TAC discussed this last month, and as did the Finance Committee. They both recommended for the authority to formally direct TAC to consider the request, and that did happen at the authority's last meeting at the end of October. So now we are at a point where this request is back in the consideration of the TAC. We do have materials that have been submitted since the authority meeting by the city of Richmond for consideration. So essentially all of the same materials that would have been received as part of a a regional project application that like you all have submitted. We do have that in hand. And then there was obviously we haven't, for those who are new, we have not done this before to entertain an off-cycle request in this manner. So we are working through now those 5 steps and understanding what the details are and what the responsibilities are, I think, for each of the parties as well as staff, to make sure that a recommendation, a thoughtful, reasoned recommendation is put in front of the authority at their next meeting, which is the end of January. So the last thing in the staff report are essentially some prompts that I think could help the discussion here at TAC as we figure out where we want to go next in honoring this request regarding eligibility, timing, and then funding sources. So hopefully you've all had a chance to look over these prompts, but Mr. Chair, I think that's a good point to tee everything up for the conversation. Ms. Clark obviously has been involved and has asked for the action item to be made today. So I'm sure she would love to speak to this as well.
Yes, thanks for that, Chet. I was going to turn it over to Dorona. And Dorona, do you have additional comments that you'd like to address before we kind of open it up?
Sure, Mr. Chair. I think that I didn't get to, formally to respond to the email, but I do think that the time frame and potentially allowing TAC time to review the application documents. So good morning, everybody. Diana Moore Clark here with the City of Richmond. I am just going to briefly talk a little bit about what we think is a important economic development initiative, regional impact for the region in this Diamond District infrastructure request. It's asking for $12.9 million, again, which we outline the specifics of what that entails. One of those being a small portion, but some portion of the Fall On Trail right away being included in this request, as well as a number 4 new roads being built or opened up in that district for the movement of people, cars, and buses. One of the things I wanted to specifically say, as we compile the data, we really went in between, hey, it really has some multimodal benefits. It's in between the intersection of Arthur Ashe and Hermitage, which both of those meet the larger than 20% vehicle per day travel that we've set for ourselves. But again, the nexus wasn't literally an intersection per se, but the project intersects those 2 important areas. And so we really, in adhering to it, we thought that either way, the multimodal plus and/or those intersections is still a stretch. And so the City of Richmond was intending for this to be, if not in those considerations, the wild card under the highway section. And so there's been some conversation about that, and so we would love to talk through that, as well as Chair Vidunas has said to me, really give you all an opportunity to look over the documents that we've submitted, as well as, the scoring to occur. So again, we thank you for allowing us to potentially take action to keep this moving. I think that a time frame of the end of January would be an exceptional move on our part, and I appreciate any help. I can yield any specific questions about the project, but I do think that we are going to make information available to the TAC, and then potentially have a close of business date that we can agree on for those comments to be received, and then responses from the city. So that is what we would like to offer, depending on how, where we get with this conversation today. Thank you.
Thanks. So let me just lay out a few things for everybody to kind of set the stage. This might help with our conversation discussion. So we kind of basically laid out a schedule here by taking action today. which would get us to step 4 in this process. Staff would then come back to TAC on the 8th of December with their findings regarding the availability of funding, or ruling on the eligibility, and we can talk about that, the scoring and the ranking of the project. Okay. That would also then be reported to the Finance Committee on the 10th, and presumably they would consider the item, and they would also make a recommendation to the full authority. And then the next meeting of the full authority is January 23rd. There's, of course, the joint meeting in December, but that's not an action meeting. So the full authority would be scheduled to consider this following kind of what the schedule that we outlined right now on the 23rd of January. And Dorona has confirmed that would seem to meet the city's requirements to have action by that time. So that kind of lays out that aspect of it in terms of the timing. I personally myself, and I think there's others that have questions about this, very specific questions about availability of other sources of funding and status of other projects that might be able to be tapped into to make up this shortfall of 12.9 million. So what I was going to suggest is that that TAC submit a list of questions, if you have any, by close of business this Wednesday. Those would then be forwarded to the city, and we'd ask that the city provide written responses to all of those questions by the 25th, which I think would be sufficient to get it into the agenda package for the next meeting. And so you have those responses to consider. And then this question regarding eligibility. Really, my view on this is that these off-cycle requests are really an opportunity to advance a request due to timing. And it appears in this case that timing is a legitimate factor and justification for moving forward with an off-cycle. Had this been a normal request, it would be the round 5. And so I think it would be appropriate if the wild card is used, that essentially the city would be tapping into their wild card for the round 5 application cycle. And they would also be using an application out of their allotment. And so therefore, this is not specifically addressed in the off-cycle guidance. It's silent on the concept of the wild card, but I think in fairness, the right thing to do would be to deduct. In other words, allow the city to use that wild card in the off cycle, but they wouldn't have an opportunity to also submit a wild card in round 5, if that makes sense to everybody. So those are just kind of some of my thoughts. I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions, so I'm going to open it up at this point. Okay, there we go. We'll go Sharon, Amy, and then Barb.
Good afternoon. So this was a lot of information. It was not in the agenda. So, and as you've all said, but when are we going to receive that information? So it's a lot to ask to have that by, tomorrow's a holiday, and to request it by Wednesday, close of business. I think we need at least 48 business hours once we receive it at minimum to review. And also these other timeframes that are being proposed in writing, just so we can, I don't know, help understand what's going on would be helpful to me. Let's see. I know we talked about a wild card. That makes sense. And when would the scoring be ready? Or what's maybe clarification about when the scoring will be ready and what the proposed action is for this TAC agenda today.
Yes. So I can the TAC action that's being proposed would be, and if you refer to the steps in the agenda package, So in order to get to step 4, you'll notice that in step 3, and I believe there's a typo in there, but it says TAC action required to move to step 3. I think that it's a typo. It should say step 4. That would be the action. So we're at step 1 right now, and under the normal process, we would go to step 2 and have that information available to us before we took action to go to step 4. But because time is of the essence, we're gonna expedite that process. That makes sense.
And I guess that's what we're voting on, right? Whether we agree with expediting it.
To allow staff to proceed with step 4, that would be
What
that would
we're
be the request. Yes.
to score it.
Yes.
Okay. And I guess the other thing is, yeah, about funding, if there's other local funding, or if the city could look at moving other priority projects for that to cover this, to rearrange the
Right.
priority.
So-
It would be something to consider. And I agree
So-
with the wild card for round 5.
So that would be, I would suggest that those be put in the form of questions to
Okay.
be submitted to the city.
Okay.
I think your request to, I had forgotten about tomorrow being a holiday. I think we have some flexibility to give a little bit more time, but I also want to give the city as much time as possible as well to be able to respond. So maybe we can find a balance in there.
Thank you.
Amy.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Sharon probably captured a lot of my same questions as well. So I guess, Chet, are you going to be sending out this information to us? Because I would like to look at what has already been submitted so I can compile my questions for the city. So will that be sent out?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, can I answer?
Yes, yes.
I guess Chair, maybe I'd like some clarification on what
Okay.
everyone's
Well-
looking for. I think that the October meeting, we had the request from the city included in that packet. I could send that out again. I mean, the other materials that the city submitted were like the model files and some of the things that staff uses to assess the scoring and ranking and prioritization.
Okay.
So I'm happy to share what we have, but I just want to make sure I get you what you're looking for.
Yeah, okay, I guess that was the question. What did they submit? Right, and what, so it sounds like it's more modeling information that they actually submitted. But what we saw in terms of the memo that Dirona sent is kind of what we've already looked at, right? And we already said, well, we think this is an off-cycle application, and I thought we've already gotten to that like first couple of steps. So
Not
is there's-
formally, but
Pardon?
I don't believe we have formally. That's the
Not
thing.
formally, okay. All right. Well, then I think we need more time, and I guess Dorona, you seem to have something to say about that, about the information that was submitted.
Do you mind, Barb, and let Dorona address that? Yep. Okay. Dorona.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the question, Amy. Yeah, I mean, I actually thought that what was submitted by the city could have been shared with the TAC. I disagree that it was all on modeling. I mean, one, it had the PES that we put together. We had some additional background information that included like the project, the sketch, and more information that was available. And so again, yeah, we were a little taken back that this wasn't shared with the TAC in this week's agenda. And one of the other things that I just want to quickly mention as we talk about, hey, are the steps being done? The off-cycle request in step 1 states if the project is eligible. And I think looking at the policies and the procedures, we lay out what is eligible. And with that uncertainty, even on our end, is why we selected the wild card. And I think that answers the first step, which is it eligible? Yes. I think, again, the procedure on how we get to the funding of it is all the questions that I think that you're asking. And then secondly, the the guidance says validate the need for the process. And again, that is, we need it in 26, 27, not 31 or when round 5 comes out. And so I think that those are simple answers from the TAC that allows us to move, and we should do that formally if necessary, but allows us to move to that next step. I would also say that the Finance Committee and the full authority did direct us to do these things simultaneously. We are really trying to do the steps in order to get this information in front of you so that you can be looking at it and ask those questions. So again, I would be with the entire application submittal to shared with the TAC and allow them to maybe have some information that can answer some of their questions before we're inundated with things that we've already given you information on.
Okay, well, that's helpful. Can I just have one quick follow-up, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So it seems like we did already sort of maybe not officially concur that this was an eligible off-cycle application, and therefore we sent it to the Finance Committee, and then it went to the board, and now it's back to us. So I guess I was ready to hear from staff, what is the available funding? And are there any Richmond projects that can either be deferred or, we can use those funds to help support this project? I guess that's kind of where my mind was, that where we were for today, not just kind of formalizing it. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of available funding, I think that's something that staff is looking at.
Okay.
It looks like there is some balance entry dollars available in the year, but again, I think staff wants to have a little bit more time just to confirm that those amounts are available. Yeah, I think that the need for the off cycle, I think that's pretty much understood. It was maybe we were approaching it maybe a little bit too formally, but we're just trying to follow the steps. This is the first time we've been through this process. So, I'm sure that we are beyond that and now looking at, some of these bigger question issues that you raise about other opportunities to fund the project. Have they been explored fully? What are the available funds? I think if the city is accepting and agreeing to this, foregoing a wild card in round 5, I think then that's not we don't need to discuss that any further. That's been taken care of. And let me just finish for a second. And I think in terms of the schedule, at the very beginning of this discussion, the city confirmed that, regardless of where we are today, the schedule that we've laid out from today going forward works with their schedule. So, whether or not something should have been considered sooner in the process, it's kind of moot. We have a timeline established that will work for the city's requirements. So that's really off the table now as well.
Are you going to send that timeline?
I'll let Dorona respond, and then we're going to go to Barb because she's been holding.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Barb. Yeah, I was going to say that the city does not technically all the way concur with the wild card. We do think that is up for consideration as well, as far as what kind of money that we get in foregoing that. We would definitely be considering if there are new dollars or if there's a swap, then I think that the round 5 in the wildcard conversation becomes different. So I just wanted to make that note. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your patience, Barb. It's all you.
Yeah, I just will reiterate that I'd like to see the other information. And I feel like we could have gone through that today just as information. But if that could get distributed, that would be very helpful. I guess I understand it, that scope of work is for these 2 roads that go through the A and C or something like that. But having that reference in the agenda package so that we don't have to go dig it up from the old agenda package would be very helpful. Anyway, I'm looking forward to moving this along and having all the information so we can consider it.
Okay, let's go ahead and just deal with what is a reasonable time frame to submit questions to the city. I had proposed the 12th, which would be close of business on Wednesday. Sharon, what are your thoughts?
Friday.
Post Friday.
Yeah, Friday.
Is that good with everybody?
Provided we get the information. I would like to see the cost information and whatever else the city has provided. I mean, it sounds like there is more detail that we could look at. And also the schedule. I didn't write down all the dates. So if you don't mind providing that schedule again.
Yeah, so check, the schedule is easy. I've laid that out. In terms of the other materials that the committee provided, when could you get that out to TAC members?
I could share that this afternoon, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I do want to say I did not consider that because we don't share regional project application information. So this would be a departure from other stuff. I understand that's a unique case, but I'm happy to share all the files that the city submitted.
Okay.
And Chad, we were sure that we have others that we can help to respond to the questions, or we could have used it today. But yeah, we think that what we submitted is okay for public consumption and the tax consumption. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So Chet will get that information out, and the schedule that I laid out, we'll get that out this afternoon. TAC members will be asked to get their questions in. Why don't we say by noontime on Friday, which would be the 14th, and then those would be compiled. Give staff a little bit of time to compile those and get those to the city with responses back by the 25th, written responses back. So if everybody finds that acceptable, really, I think what we're looking for now is just a motion to authorize staff to proceed to step 4. Again, they will provide a report back to TAC on the eligibility, the score, and the rank. And because it's only one project, my question: how do you rank something if there's only one to rank? But I believe they're going to use the scoring from round 4 to provide a relative ranking, so you can see where this project would have ranked had it been included with round 4. I think that's the way that works.
Correct.
So yes, Barb.
That's right. It just gets folded into round 4. So you can see how it would have ranked if it were submitted with the last batch.
Right. Okay. Dorona, would you like to make a motion?
Yes. Can I say so moved, Mr. Chair? Mo, do you have the motion? But yes, I definitely make the motion for TAC to approve for staff to check the funds available in the year needed and to do the eligibility score rank against previous funding scenarios.
Right. Okay, got it. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay. Thank you. Any further discussion?
Could we clarify in the motion that, the TAC it'll be sent back to the TAC for the December meeting to, evaluate the funding and the scoring and yeah.
Mr. Chair, I'll amend my motion to include that specific reference back to the December 8th meeting.
Yeah, I think that's acceptable. That was the intent. So yeah, so we have a motion second. Barb has her hand raised.
Joe.
Yes.
So that information will be provided in the agenda package for the meeting so people can review it in advance of the meeting.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
Check. Mhm.
Chad
Yeah.
is shaking his head. Yeah, that's the intent.
Well, can we amend that the staff brings this back in our agenda item on the 12/8 as well?
Yeah.
It's going to be in the agenda packet.
Sorry.
Okay, so everybody's clear. This is authorized staff to move forward with the step 4 eligibility scoring and ranking relative to round 4, contingent upon this information being sent out this afternoon, and for the information to be provided back in the December 8th TAC agenda package. I think that captures it. And I think we can do this by voice vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion passes. Okay, thanks. Thank you, everybody. Item 9, regional funding approach. Criteria.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is something that the chair and vice chair and I have discussed, and I think that we've all been thinking about it over the past few cycles. We have a process where we consider applications for regional funding. The tax revenues have been intended to address projects that will be difficult to complete through traditional means and to provide financial support to get those projects over the line. We do have our current criteria, which just consequentially we've just been discussing, that are part of the framework, which deal with eligibility and categories and all of the different ins and outs of what makes a regional project. As we're now moving through the 4th round of regional funding, I think that the leadership wants to make sure that the framework is still addressing the needs of the region. And this agenda item is information only. It's to spark some discussion, but it is intended to introduce some questions about what regional funding is and what it should support. And I think it's just to kind of get us all on the same page and thinking about that 35% and what types of projects we really want to be supporting with that portion of the tax revenues for the Cvta. So we included a few questions just to kind of to get the ball rolling. Those are in the agenda packet on page 24. But it's really about how do we define a big regional need? Are there other funding sources for projects that are proposed in this category? How can we best utilize the current framework, the adopted one that we have, as a foundation with any revisions that might be needed? I know you all have put in a ton of work on that framework, and I think it's a great guide. It's just a matter of right sizing and making sure that it's continuing to serve the needs of the region. And then some more specific stuff under 4 and 5 regarding what should regional funds be used for. Is there a way to collaborate with the TPO on looking at a holistic approach to funding different transportation needs around the region? Should local funds be designated as a primary source for projects, maybe under a certain threshold of funding, and then regional projects or regional funds are used for something above a certain dollar amount? Again, these are all just things to prompt discussion. I am not, and I don't think anyone is proposing any changes right now, but I think it's worth having that discussion as we move out of round 4 in the early spring and into preparing for round 5 and smart scale and everything else the next time around. Mr. Chair, I know you've had some thoughts on this too, but I think that's sharing the staff report and kind of my understanding of where we're headed with this. Happy to turn it back over to you.
Yes, so it has been something that I've contemplated quite a bit. But before I share my thoughts, let's hear from you guys. Drona, you have your hand up.
Thank you,
And then
Mr.
Amy.
Chair. I think that all the questions are great questions posed here. But again, I think that they are restraining and takes away some of the flexibility. And I did say it in our previous meetings, but I will repeat it today for this specific item, is that I really do think, because when we start to say, hey, if it's a certain dollar amount, or if it's this, again, for our smaller localities and our rural localities, like that can be very impactful. The same thing with being able to invigorate a project by the Cvta and doing planning studies and so forth. So again, to me, those are addressing like some of the flexibility. But I completely understand the big regional need. And I think that, again, if we maybe at least try to start from a, when we do the next time, maybe an example that shows like that percentage, Barb, that I always reference to with, frequency versus coverage, or and ridership versus coverage rather. But in this case, really big, hey, is 70% of our annual dollars, and really small or whatever are going to be 30% of those dollars, and seeing what that number looks like and availability to those localities that are ultimately going to be requesting these dollars. But again, I think keeping again some of the flexibilities, because again, when an economic development project, as we're seeing right here in Richmond, the urban core isn't technically big enough of a regional need, but is clearly a deal breaker for the city of Richmond. And I think that that is where it goes into some of the other localities with these requests, is what may not be big to you. And so maybe I'll add, lastly, I was thinking about it, that maybe, we consider the economic impact on some of these requests as well. So maybe some kind of, impact analysis is allowed to give the relevancy of the project that's being presented. But thank you.
Okay, thanks for those comments, Amy.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think those are really great points, Darona. And, I guess I think it'll be interesting when we see this current round 4 projects, kind of what was submitted. Were these really regional? I mean, I know the last round that we looked at, we had $100 million projects, right? Those would dwarf the regional pot of money, right? So we talked about those as being, kind of mega projects that would be eligible for bonding, right? Which we still are, I think, are sort of in that conversation. And I don't think we've really, gotten ourselves to a point of where we are on the bonding, quite frankly. But I still think that to me is the regional question, right? What is a huge, giant big regional need? As far as, funding through other means, I think we all know what that is, right? And we've identified the Cvta regional as being leverage funds, right, for these other programs, not necessarily being the primary source of funds. So I think we've talked about that pretty well extensively. And as it relates to the Cvta local funds as being designated as a primary source under a certain threshold, that would be really interesting, right? So most of the rural localities, I'll use New Kent as an example, for our BVI, we're having to put in $20 million of our local Cvta money, right? Which is pretty much all of our money that we're going to get over the next, 10 years or whatever. And other similar projects of this nature didn't have to put in any local money, nor sign any agreements. So, it's like, I guess that would be kind of an interesting conversation to have. Why do some projects have to put in, a significant amount, and then others have practically the exact same project and not put in any, right? Or very little. So I think that's an interesting conversation to have. Also remembering that, when we think about local projects, we have several what would be considered local projects that we've submitted. One as a wild card project, but we also have other projects, other needs within our rural system that could really use those dollars, right? For our rural rustic program, we have dirt roads. We have the most, I think, rural rustics and dirt roads in the Commonwealth outside of Loudoun County. So that, we're always told, well, we can go use those monies. So our local CVTA money have been, well utilized, but also spent several times by different, for different purposes, right? But of course, our priority is to get the DDI funded, and that's what we're trying to do. So I don't know how this conversation is going to move forward, but I feel like we've really talked about this quite a bit over the years, and maybe we just need to solidify it a little bit more for the board to understand these conversations that we already had. Thank you.
Barb, you're next. Then Dorona.
I'm next.
Barb is next.
So I feel like we not long ago submitted a wish list of projects. And, thinking about Smart Scale last round, there were projects that were not funded that could inform that or add to that list. I feel like we need to present to finance where we stand on big regional projects that aren't going anywhere, and how we would get those funded if we were to not fund anything else, just as a scenario, and kind of lay that out. I do get concerned that we kind of right size our request for CVT regional, because we know we can't get a $300 million project funded with CVT regional. So we don't submit that because it's not competitive. So then you end up submitting these small guys. And if we just keep doing that, we're never going to get the big projects funded that the CVTA was formed to fund. So in developing the framework document, we were really starting out, the intent was to make the focus on try to define what big regional means. And that was one of the questions in this item. But, we ended up needing to be more flexible, opening it up so that there are more opportunities. But when you do that, you end up in the spot that we're in now, where localities submit what they think will win in the program versus the big stuff. And so I don't think we ever give our elected officials or the full authority a very clear picture about some of the big regional projects that need to get funded. That's really all I had.
Thank you. Austin.
Yeah, thank you. I tend to agree with Barb, some of the things that you mentioned as far as the big regional projects. The only thing I don't want to lose sight of is that Goochland, and I'm sure the other small rural localities can attest that we also don't want to be forgotten in some of that conversation. I know we pushed for the wild card and so on last time, which I think was very helpful in having that flexibility. We are Goochland specifically. I mean, we're in the process of some studies that will hopefully bring some more quote unquote big projects to our list of things that we can't do locally or just through CVTA or Smart Scale alone. We'll need some kind of leverage funds, but I'll talk specifically about the fifth question on here, the local funds, and any kind of threshold. I like it at the surface level, but the more I think about it, I have concerns as far as, we use our local funds actually as some leverage for Smart Scale. So we don't want to then have to lose that availability as well. I'm getting ready to ask our board for $3 million to fully fund a Smart Scale project that we got through the Fairground Maidens Road roundabout that we're doing. We just want to be able to have that flexibility with our local funds as well.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything to add? So, yes, sir. Yes, Chet.
Thanks. Just quickly, I didn't hear anybody mention it. I mean, I think I've been talking with Miles for a couple years now about how to make a resource of funds, no matter the source, available for project use, and that would be, um, CMAC, RSTP, all those the TPO source funds, as well as CVTA dollars at the local and regional level. Are there ways to create for lack of a less used term, a one-stop shop for, if you want to get a project to through PE and shovel ready, we can help through a combination of TPO, CBTA funds from a certain source, but it's really about what the goal is rather than what pot of money you're applying for. If you have a project that's shovel ready and you want to get to construction, we could do it. We could also help with it in this other way. Is that something that you all would want to have further discussions about? And I think that, I mean, that's not something we've done in the past, but I think it's something that other regions do, and it's something that we could start to kind of talk around what that might mean, what the definition of that might include.
Thank you. Barb just raised her hand.
So yeah, I do think that we should try to figure out ways to develop some projects further. But it's really, in my opinion, needs to be a select list of agreed upon priorities by the full authority, because we don't want to be in a position of spending a lot of our money on developing plans for projects to sit on a shelf and not, get stale, not get funded. So it needs to be more targeted and deliberate, and not just every project that people are thinking about using some regional money to go towards PE or studies. Yeah, and that's why in the framework we did limit it to 30% plans intentionally, so that we didn't use up a lot of money on design without advancing the projects. And that's not good for the public either.
Thanks. Sharon, then Dorona.
Great points, Barb. I was just going to say, when Chet mentioned STBG, CMAC, like we were able to get PE funding for a few of our projects, but weren't able to start PE through CMAC, STBG because the project wasn't fully funded. So now we're just using it for leveraging. So we can't progress further. Just triggered my thoughts as we were bringing this up. Go ahead. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, yeah, I was just gonna add, I like what everyone is saying and definitely understand all of it. But one of the things that I think the CVTA brings is the mixture of what is like, political will and then these projects. And while we talk about them being on the shelf and all of those getting stale, those we could say is lacking the political will, right? And so I think that in ensuring that there's flexibility for that, then yeah, I think that we definitely can think about how we interact with the TPO and the CVTA. And I think it's definitely the intent of it to definitely be in sync. But again, sometimes, and again, with that flexibility, some of the projects that come about, and one of the reasons why we can add stuff into the long range transportation plan at that TPO level. So again, I would just today's word for me is just flexibility. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna Amy, you're gonna have the last word.
Okay, sorry.
Then I'll have a word after you, but
Okay,
ahead.
sure. Thank you. I think it'll be interesting. Maybe this next agenda topic will kind of shed light on the projects that have been funded and where they are in terms of actually advancing, right? So, I mean, I know we have, $1 billion, right, that we've claimed that we've generated since the inception of CVTA. How much of that funding has actually put projects on the ground? And where are they, right? So I think this next agenda item will maybe help us with that. And why aren't those projects moving if they were scheduled to move by now? Why aren't they? And that could be VDOT. I don't know if VDOT is on the phone, or I'm sorry, is on the Zoom this afternoon to answer some of those questions, because I think a lot of these projects do fall under VDOT administered projects. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that.
Yes, yes. So, golly, I have so many thoughts, so many really good points made. Just kind of big picture, I've always been a proponent about regional funds being used for big regional needs. 64 gap widening, fall line trail, things that I may not be able to define it, but you kind of know it when you see it as to what is a regional impact project and what isn't. And yeah, I mean, I do think we end up, missing some opportunities by trying to scatter the funds around. I mean, you really got to, regional dollars really, they're not geographic. Okay. They're based upon projects that have regional benefits. So, Joe, how do you define a regional benefit? And again, like I said, I probably can't put a definition to it, but I know it when I see it. And I think most of you all too will know it when you see it. So anyway, a great conversation. So many good perspectives on this. It's going to be interesting to see where we land. But good stuff. So with that, let's move on to Amy gave us an intro to the regional spin down plans.
Actually, Mr. Chair, can I do item 10 first?
Oh, item 10. I'm sorry, I skipped over it. Yes.
No problem.
10,
this is just a quick update. So it kind of pertains to the item 8 earlier, in expectation that that TAC would move this project forward. I have asked our two different consulting arms to do the due diligence on the Diamond District proposal. But otherwise, we have on the cost validation side, for round 4, all of the projects have been accepted and reviewed. I think there are a couple comments that are due back. Sharon, maybe you might want to check on that from Henrico, but otherwise, I think we have everything back and verified from our consultant. And then on the modeling side, we are moving forward with the model test of the Diamond District project, but all the other projects have been completed. So we are now working on have been last week working on the benefit scoring, and that will be released to everyone as soon as it's ready to go. We're probably going to send that out before we get the Diamond District stuff back, but it'll all be ready for review and part of the agenda packet at the December 8th meeting. So we're on track in terms of the round 4 schedule, and this is, if you remember, we spread out the schedule for round 4 to allow more time at precisely this moment, so that everyone had a chance to review the benefit scores, and then we'll apply the cost estimates to come up with our BC data and our final scoring over the next few months as we move into the spring. So that's just a quick status update for everyone. Be on the lookout for those benefit scores in the next week, and we'll we'll get those out to you as soon as possible.
Great. I think Sharon wanted to respond.
Yeah, I
Sorry,
heard
I didn't mean
Henrico
to.
called out, so I just wanted to clarify, and we can talk offline. But on my understanding from Zach Harris was the deadline was October 31st. Henrico submitted all 7 response to comments then. So if additional information is needed, please let me know. And
Will
I know
do.
we're waiting on one for the bond project, additional information. It was in the wrong folder. We got that information today. So we are working on that for the bond project. But if there's anything more, I can talk with you afterwards.
Okay, excellent. I'll let them know. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So now item 11, regional spend
Yes.
down plans.
Yes, I don't want, I think there's a lot of lead into this. This was basically a reminder. The last time we did the regional spend down plan, I believe was in July, second week of July. Everyone did really well on getting all of those updates done. It's a pretty detailed spreadsheet workbook. I have been working individually with everybody to get those updates in place, and for the most part, we're just about complete already. My hope was to get this done for distribution at the December meeting. So I'm going to be doing a little bit of a follow-up for those that I don't have updated pages on, but for the most part, with the commitments that we have so far through round 3, we're in good shape in getting all of that information updated so that the spend down plan is most current.
Okie doke.
I think that's
Any
it.
questions
Yeah.
for Chad about that? Frank?
Thanks, Chad. This is pretty much for educational purposes. I'm not familiar with the process, but I just want to ask, is this relevant to GRTC directly?
No, sir.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to share project status updates, I think that would be well received. But the spend down plan is not structured in a way to reflect GRTC projects.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
That may be a future iteration.
All right, Chad. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay. Item 12 is an opportunity for TAC members to share. If anybody has anything to share with the group. Okay. I do not. So our next meeting, December 8th at 1 p.m. Going once, going twice. We're adjourned.
Thank you,
See
Joe.
everybody. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good meeting.